Bro.
We are live, guys. We are
Yes,
live.
sir. We are live. It's episode 2 of the Audible. We're here. Brought it to you guys. We promised it. We follow through occasionally, and so here we are. Just waiting on some guys to show up, or girls too. We're not exclusive here. Whoever wants to can come listen to the Bluebloods, can come listen to Audible. Guys, this episode is very special because not only are we live, but we are going to post this episode on Anchor, so it will be available on all podcast streaming platforms as soon. Well, I'll probably post it at midnight. Actually, I'll take a little bit of time to edit it. Just add some pizzazz. That way, we don't have those awkward silences. We don't have whatever else. So here we are. We've got some of your questions that you submitted before we started the live, and so we're gonna go ahead and start with those. Zach, why don't you go ahead and kick us off with the first question that we got from Instagram?
Yeah, so on Instagram, Charlie Roush submitted a question. He wants to know who we think is going to be the number one pick in the NFL draft this upcoming season. So I feel like we've kind of answered this on the podcast, but Brandon, go ahead and give your obvious answer here.
Charlie, you got to be kidding me. What are we doing? Listen to an episode, maybe. I'm messing with you, man. But it's going to be Trevor Lawrence. How is this even a question? I think even if a team doesn't need a quarterback, they're going Trevor Lawrence here. And I think that's for pretty obvious reasons. There's what else are you supposed to do? You pass up Trevor Lawrence. What happens? He becomes a star like we think he's going to. And then you're the bozo team. You're the loser team that didn't choose Trevor Lawrence. You passed him up, and you might have gotten a pretty good draft pick out of it, but you missed out on Trevor Lawrence. And worst case scenario, what happens is you draft a guy who everyone thinks has the most potential in the world. He's a bust. Who could have called it? No one can blame you for that.
I mean, and we talked about, I think it was Matt Miller's mock draft for Bleacher Report, and he had Penei Sewell from Oregon, the offensive tackle, going first. And even though he might be the best overall prospect in the draft, regardless of position, I think passing up on two probably future franchise quarterbacks in Fields and Lawrence could be a major setback for your program. And so personally, I would pick Lawrence, but I've actually heard a lot of arguments for Fields and Trey Lance leading up to right now. So I think it could go any way. It really depends on who does the best this next season.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyway, so there's our answer. We've said it 1,000 times, so we're back to say it again. Guys, we haven't had very many questions roll in yet, so I'm going to go ahead and hit you guys with another question. This is one that Zach and I have been pondering for a while. We've wanted to bring it up. We didn't know the right time to do it. I think right now is the time to do it. We can get some feedback. We can get some people talking in the conversation. It's not just me and Zach going back and forth into oblivion where no one knows where the end is. So let's go ahead and do it. The namesake of this podcast, not the Audible. We're talking about the Bluebloods. Who are the true blue blood programs in college football? And Zach, you put me on the spot every single episode. It's your turn. I'm not going to say in any specific order, but we're going to each choose 8 blue blood programs. Give me one, Zach.
So I personally, the first one, I'm sorry guys, is got to be Alabama. Alabama is a blue blood program, regardless on how I personally feel about them, how you personally feel about them, how Brandon, and I think Alabama, okay. So in some record books, they have the most championships out of anybody. So we have to give it to them. And I think they're probably one of the only programs that just has consistent national championships throughout almost every decade. My second one, I would have to say, is Oklahoma. I think Oklahoma has had success throughout their program's history, and I think you see it recently with the 3 straight playoff bursts. They dominated in this. They had national championships in the 60s. They had really good teams in the 70s, 80s, 90s. I mean, Oklahoma has been consistently good for really as long as I can remember. And so I'm going to have to go give them second place. Third,
Zach,
It's
don't give away all at
uh
once. We need to
okay.
talk. We need to have some
Okay,
discussion here.
go ahead.
Um,
So those are my first two. I think you probably have those first two as well.
well, yeah, they're both in mine. That's a given. We're not really breaking ground here. I think both of those are very good football teams historically. Sadly, Zach is right. We've got Choklahoma. Choklahoma, Zach, is a very commonly used term for that blue blood program. But yeah. I mean, Oklahoma's for sure in there. They're constantly, in title talks. Who I don't know. Another team I would have to go with, one maybe Zach hasn't mentioned yet, is going to be Ohio State. Southern Miss, unfortunately, is not a blue blood program. We just got that comment rolling in here. To the top, though. To the top. But Ohio State's going to have to be my third choice here. Or not even my third choice. I guess I already gave you my first two. Ohio State's another one of those teams like Oklahoma. They are in title talks every single year. It doesn't matter how bad they get. They're always up there. I don't think that makes you a definitive blue blood program. I don't think that always being in the title race does that alone, but I think that doing it as often as they've done it over the history of college football. When you think of college football, you think of Ohio State, you think of Alabama, you think of Oklahoma. Yeah. So I think those three are probably the most given programs. I mean, there might be a few more, but I feel like we're starting to get in a little bit more shaky territory here with a few of our next picks.
Yeah, Oklahoma. I mean, not Oklahoma. Ohio State would have to be on my list as well. I think if you go back to the Woody Hayes era, you go through the Urban Meyer era, and now you're even in the Day era here. And I think Ohio State is going to be around forever. I think to be a blue blood program, you have to have multiple things. You have to have tradition. You have to have championships, a winning history in general, and I think you had to dominate at least an era or a period of time in all three of the programs we've named so far, in Alabama, USC, and Ohio State have dominated an era of time or a period of time. So I like that pick there. I guess if I had to go with a fourth team, man, this is really, really tough now. And okay, so hear me out, guys. This is gonna be a stretch, but I'm gonna have to say Florida.
Oh no, get out of here. No. That's absolutely nuts. What are you talking about, Zach?
I mean, Florida's had dominant teams through multiple eras, and the late 2010s, they were the most dominant team in college football when they had Tebow, and they won 2 out of 3 national championships. They went to the SEC championship was 4 straight years. They had dominant teams under Steve Spurrier in the 90s, and that doesn't even include Heisman winning quarterbacks and things back in the 60s, who was Steve Spurrier. And they check off all the boxes of a blue blood program, but the only thing they may be missing is the tradition, but I think they have it. I think it's underrated. I think their environment's underrated. The Chomp's underrated. I think the Swamp's underrated. I think Florida is probably the most overlooked blue blood program, in my opinion.
Yeah, they're overlooked for a good reason. They don't deserve to be there. There's no reason.
How so, though? How so?
Like, give me. They have 3 national championships over their history, Zach. And you know when the first one was? 1996. 1996 was their
But they still had good programs.
It doesn't matter. A lot of schools have good programs. I mean, you can't say, Zach, their overall record since they started is 735 and 420. That's not great. I mean, that's not fantastic. That's a .63 record overall. They have 3 national championships coming in 1996, 2006, and 2008.
That's true.
It's just, to me,
I think. I mean, so if you also look at it, they have Florida is always in that conversation of like it. If someone that you've never seen, that has never watched college football, if you were listing off just teams that like were historically great, Florida would be in like the top 10 at least, right?
Not in my opinion. So that leads me to my fourth pick. With my fourth pick, I'm going to go with a team that I would probably say has a lot more tradition and definitely a lot more titles. I'm going to go with USC. I think USC is a true blue blood program. Obviously, in recent years, they've kind of fallen off. It may look like they're starting to hit their stride again. I think that maybe once they sign a certain head coach, I won't I won't say his name, but his name
Another head coach that has been at both at 2 of my 4 programs
yeah,
on this list.
his name rhymes with bourbon tire, so bourbon tire. Unfortunately,
Oh,
there are
man.
no Ivy League. We just had a comment. Unfortunately, there are no Ivy League schools in my Blue Blood program. I know that's where football originated. I get it. Look,
I feel like we'd have to name all of them at that point, like Harvard, Princeton, Yale, all those, especially like Yale. I mean, Yale has technically more national championships than even Alabama does. So I think you'd have to include Yale in there, but limiting us to 8 teams and we have to include 4 Ivy League schools would be just damn near impossible.
no, no, I think that's a great comment though. Ivy League schools, people forget about them. You know, Brown, that's a good school. I don't know about football, but lacrosse. If we're talking lacrosse, then every single Ivy League school is in this. That's a fact.
That's a fact.
But to continue with USC, I mean, is there another team? I understand there's a few, but I couldn't name 5 more schools that have more tradition than USC does in college football, as far as that's concerned. I think that, you know, and I keep saying it over and over again, and I'm trying to think of a better way to say it. So just hold with me real quick. But I mean, when you think of college football, you think of USC. I mean, that when you see that red and gold that they wear on the field, I mean, that's just college football. You know, that's the epitome of it. Princeton does deserve to be on this list. I'll probably give them one of us. No, that was another comment, guys. For the guys listening to the podcast, we're getting these comments rolling in. So if you hear me say something random, I'm not being ridiculous. Yeah.
It's just a comment, guys. But I mean, I like USC, and especially because they dominated. What was it? 2000, probably 2 to 2006. They were probably one of the most dominant teams in college football. So I think that's a fair that's a fair pick there, and I think they would most likely be on my list too. So I don't think. I just for some reason I was saving them to the end, but you said no order, so I saved them to the end for you.
Okay, there we go.
But I guess if I had to go my next pick here, this is where it gets hard. Okay, so this team wasn't good in the early like 20s, 30s, 40s, but I think their domination of 2 probably decades it justifies them being here, and it's Miami. I think Miami falls in the Blue Blood program just because personally, outside of Alabama recently, I don't think a team dominated a decade like Miami did. I really don't. I think under Jimmy Johnson, under Howard Snellenberger, and all these guys, I think Miami had consistently the best team in the country, and I don't think you can argue that they're not a blue blood program. They might not have, the historic success dating back to 1910, but I don't think a team was more consistent from the 80s to about 2005 than Miami was.
That's fair enough, and they're one of my blue blood programs as well. So I guess I'll go ahead and give them my 5 spot. Miami in the 80s is just, I mean, the U. When you think of college football, the U, you kidding me? That's the first thing that comes to your mind. Yeah, man, that's a great pick. I'm still not going to agree with you on every single one of your picks because you have some ridiculous things going on. But to continue my list, my number 6 blue blood program. Man, this is gonna be tough. I'm at 6, and I'm starting to realize, oh no, I'm leaving teams off that might need to be on. We might have to expand this to 10, guys. That's just a little preface. But I'm going to go with Notre Dame. How do you leave Notre Dame off this list? You can't talk about college football unless you talk about Notre Dame. Notre Dame, Rudy alone lands them on this list. But no, Notre Dame is
terrible.
Just they are. I mean, Newt Rockne started it all, I would say. Newt Rockne in the 1920s, moving on to the 1930s, at Notre Dame really cemented them in history of college football. And so, I mean, they continue that domination through decades and decades and decades. And I mean, even to now, I'm not going to say it's domination, but I mean, they've landed themselves in a playoff so far, and they've made it to a national championship. I mean, that's just this past decade alone. So I think that they definitely deserve to be on the list of blue blood programs. We're talking college football.
Yeah, and I mean, when a school has 2 coaches that were on our all what was it, the all-time greatest coach. They had Newt Rockne as a 3 seed, and Lou Holtz was like a 6 or 7 seed. So I feel like a blue blood program to have 2 coaches. I think the only other school to have 2 on the list was Alabama with Bear Bryant and Nick Saban. So I think Notre Dame deserves to be on this list, and I would also include them, which is just dwindling down my positions that I have teams in. And I guess if I have to go with another team, man, Brandon, you made this so hard on me.
Just got to put you on the spot.
Yeah, this is real tough. Like Brandon threw this at us right at the beginning of the show, guys. Who do we think are the 8 blue blood programs? And as much as this pains me to say, I'm gonna have to put Michigan up here. I think Michigan has to be there. As much as we give Michigan crap on this podcast, or we don't really like them.
I don't like them. I'll say that. But
okay, I give Jim Harbaugh endless amounts of hate on this podcast, so I will own this. But personally, I think Michigan is. I mean, you look back in the 80s, 90s, even they might not have the national championship dominance of Alabama or Oklahoma or even Notre Dame or some schools like that, but I think they're always consistently good. And you have to, once you get down to spot 6, 7, or 8, you have to give a little bit of leeway. They might not have won the championship every year, but Michigan's always been a historically dominant or competitive team.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you there. They landed a spot on my list as well, which leads me to my last pick. If we're just doing top 8, I really think we're going to have to move this on to 10, Zach, because I can't leave some of these schools off. And so with my number 8 school, that is a true blue blood program, in my opinion. And, Zach wants to talk about teams that we've given a lot of hate to. And so here we go. We're going to continue with it.
Horns down.
Yeah. Texas. That is a blue blood program. The Big 12 is really good at producing blue blood programs who can't win titles anymore. And so we've got Oklahoma and Texas on our list now.
At least Oklahoma's making the playoffs, man. Like, give them a little bit of credit.
No, Texas they weren't back until this year. They're gonna be back this year. Don't worry.
That's true.
This pandemic really got them. If they're not back, we can blame it on that. There's always something to blame it on. But yeah, I mean, how I don't want to talk about it a lot. I don't like them, but they're on this list. They're back on my list. I'll say that. This is the only time they'll be back.
I like Texas here. I think I'll have to give it to them because, I mean, especially during the Matt Brown era, man, they were so good. They beat USC. They should have beat Alabama if Colt McCoy didn't have money on the game and threw it.
Hold on.
That's a bad look.
No. We need to hear more about this, Zach. We have time to talk. Here we are.
Okay, so my theory is Colt McCoy threw that game. I think he was scared.
Because, Zach, you and I have never talked about this. We've never had this discussion. All I remember is we brought this up on a podcast episode, and I was like, when Colt McCoy got injured, you go, "Oh, I don't know if he got injured." Now, what's going? I mean, you think he faked an injury?
Yeah, I do. I think it wasn't as serious as he made it seem. I do. I think so. If you watch the replay, guys, go watch the replay. I'm not as savvy on this software yet. We can probably post videos on here. I'll find a way to do it. Next Audible, I'm going to post a video of the hit. He gets hit, but it doesn't look that bad, and he just kind of like falls over and he walks completely off the field. He looks completely fine. He just looks shook. And I'm sorry, in the national championship game, unless you are going to have to go to the hospital for surgery, you got to play. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I personally, I mean, we've seen players. I mean, was it No, it was we've seen NFL players play with broken legs. I can't remember his name right now. He played with a broken leg in No, he definitely didn't play. But there was people. Ronnie Lott cut off his finger on the sidelines in the NFC Championship game to go back in. He cut his finger off.
Pinky. It was the tip of his pinky. It was not
okay, Brandon. I'm sorry. Are you cutting the tip of your pinky off for anything?
I don't know. I mean, we've already said we're going to make some bets this season. That might have to be one of them. I want to put that at stake.
If North Carolina beats Auburn week 2, you got to cut that pinky off. Like that's the bet.
I mean, honestly, I'm not super opposed. I'm gonna have to run it past my fiance. She's gonna be my wife in a week, and so she might. I don't know if she's gonna have a say in it. She probably will. But yeah, we'll talk about it.
But I mean, personally, I think they could have beaten Alabama with Colt McCoy, but he gave up on his team, man. As a senior, I think it was embarrassing. I have strong feelings about this. But yeah, I'll give Texas my last spot, and we'll post these. But I feel like we left just some obvious ones off, man. I feel like this is bad. Like I feel like Tennessee has an argument. I mean, it's Nebraska has an argument.
If we were going to continue, Nebraska was going to be my next team, and I was going to get. I mean, it's like we give every team that's on this list a lot of crap, but here they are. I'm not cutting my pinky off. I'm sorry. That's on me. That will not be a bet. Don't worry about it.
Hey, the listeners are concerned. The fans are concerned, Brandon. They don't want to see you lose your pinky on the podcast.
I know. Or maybe they really do. Maybe that was an excited.
That's true.
An excited comment.
He was like, "Can I get tickets? We're gonna sell Bluebloods tickets to Brandon cutting his pinky off."
That could be
on
fun.
The show.
Yeah.
I mean, so like, kind of back to recent news. I mean, today, Reggie Bush is officially allowed back to be. I guess I don't know what. Like, okay, so the one thing I'm kind of confused about is like, was he just not allowed to like be on campus, or was he just not allowed to do anything USC like at all?
No, he wasn't allowed to like associate with USC. He definitely wasn't allowed to be there.
Well, I know he was this season because he was the announcer for the what was it? Who did they upset? Or the Utah game. It was that Friday night Fox game when Keenan came in and he was the announcer. So it was like his first time being there and they allowed him to, but he wasn't allowed to wear like anything USC.
Yeah, which is crazy. So let's talk about it. Reggie Bush is back as he should be at USC. But It doesn't make sense to me why USC would ban him. USC is the reason that he got in all this trouble. They're the ones who paid him. It's not like he went and forced them to pay him. No, they offered him that money, and then they're like, you know what? You're not allowed back. Why? Yeah. Why? What? That doesn't make a lot of sense.
And personally, I feel like they should have paid him more for what he did for that program. I mean, so I don't like quoting other like sportscasters a lot, but I know Brandon hates this guy, but like Colin Cowherd said it best. I mean, Reggie Bush might have been the single most popular college football player ever in his prime.
Yeah, he really was. I mean, people who didn't watch college football knew Reggie Bush.
Yes. I mean, when you could get a date with Kim Kardashian as a college kid, like you gotta be pretty famous, man.
Yeah, he had some money though. Don't worry. Apparently,
I mean, the weird part is that the reason this came up is because they were arguing about so as we talked about, college athletes have a certain value based on their social media following and etc. And we talked about Sam Ehlinger having an almost $1 million evaluation for his last year. How much would Reggie Bush be worth at his junior year?
25 million.
It would be so the only player I can see maybe competing is Tim Tebow at his prime. Yeah, Tim Tebow at his height was just outrageously popular.
And honestly, I want to agree with you saying that Reggie Bush is the most popular college football player at his prime. It had to be Tim Tebow. It had to be. I mean, there are legit and I said that people who don't watch college football knew Reggie Bush, which is true. But everyone in this country knew Tim Tebow. It doesn't matter if you hate college football. If you avoided it with all you could, you knew who Tim Tebow was. Like, he's that big of a name.
I mean, so I feel like they were known for different reasons. I feel like Tim Tebow had a bigger like off the field presence. But I mean, Reggie Bush, I'm sorry, guys. Like, I think we've talked about this on the podcast 2 or 3 times. He was the most electric football player I think I've ever watched in my entire life. I think he might have been the best college football player I've ever seen in my life.
I agree with that. But did he win the Heisman Trophy as a sophomore?
No.
But
he also wasn't a quarterback.
You know who did? Tim Tebow did.
Yeah, Tim Tebow. But you know who won it as a freshman? Johnny Manziel. So who's really?
Well,
if we want to play that game,
He didn't win it as a freshman.
He read it as a redshirt freshman.
Oh, that's not the same.
Tim Tebow won it as a redshirt
That's
sophomore.
No, I don't want to hear it. I don't like this game anymore, Zach. This is ridiculous. Are we sure about that? I'm fact checking you right now.
What about which one, Johnny Manziel or Tebow?
Yeah, about Johnny Manziel. There's no chance he was a redshirt freshman.
A redshirt freshman, man. He was
I
the
don't
first
believe
one.
you. I simply don't believe you.
Oh my gosh.
Well, prove it then. I mean, if you know so much.
Oh, what's a valid source? I mean, ESPN because
I'm on Wikipedia. So.
Oh God, I'm gonna go edit it real quick.
You're right. He okay.
That's right.
Zach's right. Surprise. He's not usually right though. Like we can't always. You're not. You like to act like you're the analytics guy. Like you base everything on facts, and you just don't. Zach's out here talking with his heart.
I base this much of my stuff off facts.
He's talking out his heart and something else that looks like an upside down heart. So that's
I don't
what
know.
Zach
I mean, what I picked against Auburn. Every time I picked against Auburn, I think I won.
I want to say that I'm very proud of you, by the way, for not including Auburn on your Blue Blood programs. As I didn't, by the way.
Anyone who included Auburn or LSU needs to be checked.
I don't know if they need to be checked. But notice how humble I was. 4 times. Zach had a 3-time national champion on the list. I have a 4-time that was not on my list. So if that shows,
but we just talked about how y'all didn't deserve one. So
I don't know. If
I'm gonna call y'all a 3-time.
No, LSU deserved every single one that they got. We don't need to have this conversation again, Zach. We've had it before. We don't want to bore.
Y'all lost to Arkansas and Kentucky.
I don't know. You keep saying y'all, and I'm not LSU. Do I look like LSU to you?
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I don't mind the whole y'all thing. I'm cool with it.
Let's have that talk then. What's going on? What you don't care about it?
I mean, it is what it is, man. I mean,
we don't need to go into depth about it. We don't really.
Yeah,
need to go into
I mean, especially if you graduated from the school.
If you graduated, I get it. I get it. Now it's and if you go there, then sure, I get it. I don't know. I don't have a problem with it either. A lot of people do have a problem with it.
You have to go get an associate. You have to go get an associate's degree.
I did not play those years. I've never claimed to be y'all though. So let's that's write it down. Do what you need to do. Zach is looking real cute right now in his room with that Bo Jackson picture behind him. Right. See, we get confused. Like Amir, he has the signed footballs. He's like 8 years old. Zach has the decorations of an 8-year-old in his bedroom. It's very nice.
Oh my God. I mean, so I want to shift to some more I mean, apparently they love my decorations, so get out of here.
Nah, I think he's laughing at you, Zach.
It's fine. He's laughing with me. It's all good. But no, man. So guys, I don't know if you heard this week, the NCAA approved a 6-week plan to get the season started on time. They're supposed to be voting on it. I believe it's June 15th or July 15th, one of the two. But around the country, we've seen, I think Auburn had 3 players test positive for coronavirus. Bama had 5. A lot of other teams haven't come out and reported it. So Brandon, I mean, do you think 6 weeks is enough time to get everything going for a lot of these programs?
I think, I mean, in an ideal world, no, but in the world we're living in right now, yeah, sure. I think if a lot of these schools, if you told them they had a week to turn around to get your team on the field, especially these bigger schools who make a lot of their money off of that, they could do it. Now, would Bama win if we only had 6 weeks to turn around this season? Someone thinks so. Someone thinks Bama wins again. I don't know. It's a pretty hot take. Bama never really wins. So what a real hot take we've got coming in to the chat. No, but yeah, I honestly think that if you gave a lot of these schools 6 weeks, they could do it. Maybe the smaller schools are going to be pushing a little bit more to get a quality product out. Do I think that we're going to have the same level of football that we normally do? No, that's pretty much a given. But we're getting college football, that's a plus, right? I have something to do on Saturdays during the fall now, so that's perfect.
Well, the thing that like I'm interested in is I think this is the first time that people. So, do you think the playoff committee will more strongly reward teams who had a tougher first game because of the lack of preparation, or do you think that it'll be equal? So the teams that did have weaker schedules early are going to benefit the most because it's of course it's easier to play Louisiana Monroe week 1 than it is to play someone like where Ohio State has to go to Oregon on week 2.
As much as I like to bag on the playoff committee, I think this is one of the situations where it actually comes in handy to have that committee, just because you can have that human conversation. You don't have the computer running numbers and awarding points like we did in the BCS.
Right.
We have a playoff committee now, so they can talk about the situations. They can talk about, oh, well, you know what, so and so had to go play this ranked opponent away to start the season out. They only had this amount of time to prepare. I guess the argument is always there that team prepared well enough to beat the team that lost, but at the same time, I mean, it's tough if you're a school like, let's say Alabama, and this would never happen. This is why it's a hypothetical question. Let's say Alabama went to play Ohio State in the first week of the season. They had to travel to Ohio. They would never do that because God forbid
they'd play them in Birmingham and call it a neutral site.
Yeah, God forbid Alabama ever plays a quality opponent out of conference. But no one will schedule them, Zach. No one schedules them. People are afraid to play them.
USC wasn't scared. Apparently, they got to play USC week 1 this year.
Yep.
In Dallas, though.
But what I'm saying is that if Alabama traveled to Columbus to play Ohio State, then maybe Ohio State edges them out. Well, they played at the Horseshoe. That's a home field advantage. Alabama only had this amount of time to prepare, and then go play an away game. Like you just said, 5 of their players tested positive for coronavirus. I think a lot of that stuff gets taken into consideration. I think that Alabama, even if they have that one loss to Ohio State on the record, they still have a shot to get into the playoff. They aren't kicked out of the playoff because they lost one game early in the season. So yeah, I get what you're saying, and I think that in a lot of scenarios there will be a lot of leeway granted.
I think there should be. I think there should be in a normal season. I think Ohio State, if they travel all the way to Oregon week 2 and lose a close, let's say 7-8 point game, I think it's outrageous that they would get penalized for that. I mean, a loss to Oregon on the road is so much. I mean, and so guys, I want to preface this. There's levels to this non-conference early game schedule thing. I mean, losing on the road to Oregon is a lot worse than losing in North Carolina and Atlanta. I mean,
absolutely.
Let's just look at last season. I mean, if LSU goes and loses to Texas at Texas and Bama goes and loses to Duke in Atlanta, the LSU loss should be favored a lot more. And the fact that LSU went and played at Texas and won should carry more weight than going to Atlanta to play an ACC team. Just Duke. Personally, yeah, especially Duke. I mean,
team. It's not basketball.
That's just a terrible matchup. But I mean,
that's the reason that this past season, Oregon, if they hadn't lost to Arizona State, would have made the playoff, even though they lost to Auburn in the first week of the season. They lost to Auburn in Dallas, a true neutral site.
By 6 points.
Yeah, and they hardly lost, and it was at the very end of the game.
They had the lead for the entire game, dude, until 4 seconds left.
Zach remembers very vividly. He was there. Sick brag.
Bro, you sick brag for me on that one.
I did. I'm sorry. Yeah, that's my fault. No, but yeah, I mean, that's the type of thing we're talking about. The playoff committee has given leeway in the past, and they're going to continue to give it. Oklahoma lost to Kansas State in the regular season this year. I don't know I don't know how that conversation went. I guess they won the Big 12 is why they ended up in the playoff.
Dude, I don't know how that loss didn't count for more because Kansas State beat them to death that game, guys. I'm talking about it wasn't even close.
It's the stadium.
It is.
Man.
it's one of the most underrated small stadiums in the country. It just is. And I don't know what it is. I don't know what they're feeding them Kansas fans, but that
Isn't
they come
Kansas
loud.
State? Isn't Kansas State the? They've got a couple cool stadiums. I feel like their basketball stadium. Isn't that like?
It's an octagon or something like that.
Yeah, it's weird, but it's really cool. We're not a basketball podcast, but we can be sometimes. So yes, we're taking over the world. Don't worry. Man, yeah, but I mean, what do you? I mean, we talked about the playoff committee giving a little bit of leeway, but how much leeway do we really think they have to give? Because that first argument that I said, like, Alabama travels to Columbus, plays Ohio State, they get edged out. But then the argument turns to, well, Ohio State obviously had time to prepare for this game. They had they had the same 6 weeks. Why were they prepared and Alabama wasn't, and why should we give Alabama leeway?
Yeah, so I get that argument. I get that argument, but I mean, so I feel like that argument is more valid for teams that both played neutral site games. So, like last year, if you were comparing Alabama to Auburn, they both played neutral site games. It might not have been the same opponent, but can you really fault one for being less prepared than the other? But I think traveling all the way, like all the way across the country, like Ohio State is this year, I think that should carry more weight regardless. I mean, yes, like you could be more prepared, but Oregon's a better team than what let's just pick a random team. Let's pick Alabama. Oregon's a better team than USC, right? I mean, I feel like everyone can give that. Oregon's going to beat USC this year in the Pac-12. And it's a harder trip to go play at Autzen Stadium than it is to go play in Jerry World.
Right. Absolutely.
And so I think those teams should be greatly rewarded. I think if it comes down, so let's say Alabama slips up at Death Valley, or they slip up against Auburn, or they slip up against Georgia. I think if it comes down to an 11-1 Ohio State with a loss on the road to Oregon and a Bama team with a loss to LSU, Georgia, or Auburn, I think Ohio State gets that nod.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. I mean, the playoff committee, they are human. And I keep saying that, but you have to remember they are human. They have the same conversations, probably in probably much more educated conversations than Zach and I have, but they have the same conversations that we're having right now. They talk about this kind of stuff, and they weigh out the highs and lows, and that's the reason that certain teams edge other teams out. That's the reason that Alabama didn't win their conference championship when Georgia did, and then Alabama and Georgia both made the playoff, and everyone lost their minds because the SEC had two teams in the playoffs. Yep. So they're human; they can talk about things like that, and so that's why.
So let's talk about the playoff, man. It is June 10th, so we got 2 months till the season even starts.
Oh yeah,
minimum. And media days is coming up next month. I think the SEC announced today that'll be virtual media days. They're not allowing people to go to Atlanta, but you can do it over Zoom and stuff. But so everyone does preseason predictions, Ben. Who are your 4 playoff teams right now, and who are the first 2 out?
Oh man, you are that was really mean. That was really mean of you, Zach. But just to put me on the spot, let's go. I mean, we've spoken about it before. It's not like this isn't like a super big surprise. I'm trying to remember so I don't go back on my teams.
I mean, stuff changes, especially now. Justin Ross is out for the season. So I want to make a quick correction before you start. Last episode we talked about Alabama's receiving core, and we highlighted a certain breakout player that has actually transferred now. And it kind of makes me upset, but it's fine. His name is Tyrell Shavers, 6'6", 205 receiver we highlighted as a breakout receiver for Bama, transferred to Mississippi State 2 days ago.
Oh, how did I not hear about that?
Yep.
I don't know how I didn't hear about that. Did he? Why?
playing time, I believe, is what he cited it as, and he's going to play at Mississippi State with Mike Leach in that offense, which
That's going to
makes
be
him
scary.
super dangerous, super
That's
dangerous,
going to
man.
be so scary. And they have Stanford's quarterback from last year too. That's going to be terrifying. Holy cow. Anyway, man, wow. I don't know if that changes a lot for Mississippi State. I think this is still, but he's a sophomore, right?
He'll be a junior this year.
He'll be a junior, but he's still got 2 quality years left.
Yeah, and I think he's immediately eligible, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know why he's immediately eligible, but I believe he is.
I don't know. I feel like anyone that leaves Alabama is immediately eligible. I feel like they've been left psychologically damaged by Nick Saban and his
yeah.
So that's
it's tough, man. And I mean personally, I don't think it changes much for Bama either. I think it gives them less depth at wide receiver than I would like for them to have. But I mean, that team has so much talent at literally every single position, man. I mean, they probably have the best offensive line going into the country next year, even without Jedrick Wills. And but they get Alex Leatherwood back for some reason, man. Alex Leatherwood probably goes above Jedrick Wills in the draft this year. But I think Alabama makes the playoffs. I mean, let's be honest here. I think they do make it.
Yeah, I think they end up winning the SEC. As much as it pains me to say, that's just the safe pick to go with. I mean, if you asked me last year, did I say LSU wins the SEC last year? No, you did.
You know who did?
You. I just said
boy.
That. Zach did.
I took that one.
Zach predicted LSU. I don't know how he predicted LSU when no one else did, but he predicted LSU. I predicted Alabama. It's the safe pick. You know, I'm not let's not pretend like I'm a genius right now. I'm not suddenly the smartest guy on the planet. I'm going to go with the safe pick. I think Alabama is winning the SEC, and I think the winner of the SEC is automatically in the playoff. I mean, they've been in the playoff. They've been in the playoff every single year since the playoff started.
And the second place team is also has a real shot at getting in, just like it always. I mean, let's be honest here, but if I had to pick right now, my number one team in the rankings is going to be Ohio State. I think Ohio State is going to be one going into the playoffs this year. I think the transfer of Trey Sermon. Last episode, guys, go check it out. I broke down their wide receiving core. I'm more excited about their wide receivers than anything. And the biggest factor, Justin Fields is coming back. I mean, let's be honest, probably the second best quarterback easily in college football. And so Ohio State for me is going to have one of probably the strongest roster in college football.
Yeah, definitely. They definitely will. That's why they're my number one as well. Ohio State. Look, and I feel like I'm piggybacking off of you, which I am. But how do you bet against Justin Fields?
That's true.
How do you bet against him? He should have. They should have won. They should have been in the national championship this past season. And I think they would have. I honestly think Ohio State LSU is a better matchup than LSU Clemson. I honestly think Ohio State gives LSU a better game than Clemson did this past year.
Well, stylistically, I felt like they matched up better. I mean, they had that power run game with Dobbins, and I don't think LSU's front seven was really equipped to stop that. Honestly, I feel like Clemson's running game is more shifty and hit the edge. Dobbins would run somebody over, and I feel like their offense brought a little bit more balance. And for some reason, if you guys remember the Fiesta Bowl, Clemson's defense had a terrible start to that game, and I feel like Ohio State's defense was gelling better at that point in time, and that secondary probably was more equipped to try to stop Joe Burrow in that offense.
Right, and you can ask Zach. I mean, if we go back to December when the committee's choosing the playoff, I'm seriously thinking LSU is going to get the number 2 spot. At this point in time, I think LSU's number 2, and I think Ohio State gets number 3. And so I'm sitting here thinking, oh my God, LSU is going to play Ohio State in the first round of the playoff. Are they even going to get after this historic season? Are they even going to get to the national championship? And I was scared of that, and I'm not going to back down at this point. LSU won the national championship. I'm ecstatic. Yeah, I mean, as any Louisiana resident would be, not to brag, I did move, but no, I mean, it's it's one of those things where I honestly think Ohio State just carries on the legacy from last year because what did they lose? I mean, they lost Chase Young. They lost J.K. Dobbins. They lost. I mean, they did lose a good bit, but Ohio State's not like one of these programs where they lose players and they have to rebuild. It's like they lose players and they replace, and other players step up in their spot, and they have players that maybe you heard of once or twice this past season that are just going to be stars this season. They're going to be household names. I mean, Chase Young, I feel like is a perfect example. Chase Young, obviously, if you're a big college football fan, you knew of Chase Young before this past season. But if you're a casual fan, you probably heard his name once or twice, 3 times. And then he's in the Heisman race as a defensive end this past season. So it's one of those programs that can build excellence like that. And so I think that it's a safe pick to take Ohio State and Justin Fields to the bank. And I wouldn't be surprised if they ended up winning it all this year. I hate Ohio State, but it would not surprise me at all.
I mean, yeah, so Ohio State and Bama are 1 and 2 for me just because the strength of schedule is going to be better than Clemson. And I think they're going to have better wins and they're going to get pulled into that first, second spot. I think Clemson falls into the third spot. I think they still go undefeated, and it's just because of the lack of competition on their schedule. I mean, let's be honest here. I mean, the ACC is going to be stronger, but I mean, do you really see Virginia Tech, North Carolina, Pitt, and those type of teams really making a run at Clemson this year? I think Florida State's still way off, especially with what has been transpiring down in Tallahassee. So I think Clemson is just in there because of a lack of competition.
Yeah, and I really wanted to leave Clemson out of this. I did. I don't think they're as good as they were last year. Clemson has kind of like their spikes and their falls in every other year, and I think, which is weird because they kind of had like 2 spikes over the past 2 years, but they do have their spikes and falls. I mean, even over this period of time when they've been so good. But I mean, before this past season, it's been up, down every year. What's good, everybody in the comments, by the way. I feel like we've been neglecting you, but we're back. Yeah, but Clemson, we see those ups and downs all the time. But this past season, obviously, was kind of the difference, I guess you could say. I feel like this Clemson team this past year wasn't excellent. I know they were very good, but in terms of like the excellence we've gotten out of Clemson teams in the past, they weren't as good this past year as they were 2 years ago. When Trevor Lawrence was a true freshman and he took them to win the national championship, that might have been one of the greatest college football teams of all time. And I just don't see this past year's Clemson team in that conversation, period.
Yeah.
But this season, I wouldn't be surprised if they weren't as good as they were this past season. It sounds like I'm bagging on Clemson, which I guess I kind of am. But they made the national championship. That's just how good Clemson is right now.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, personally, so I think the biggest thing for Clemson that they were missing was experienced leadership. They had Isaiah Simmons, but I mean, if you remember that defensive line from the national championship year, they had 4-year starters on that defensive line that were in the program, and I feel like they had a big hole on the defensive line. They had Xavier Thomas, but I really didn't feel like any of the other defensive linemen shined, personally, to me. They didn't really get a lot of pressure on Joe Burrow. They didn't. Outside of Isaiah Simmons, the secondary got exposed in that LSU game, and the front seven got brutally just beaten down against Ohio State in that first half. I mean, that 17-0 lead was built strictly off of J.K. Dobbins manning up and running through just massive holes. And personally, I don't think Clemson is going to be as good as it was in that season, but I think they'll be better than last year. I think Brian Barisi coming in, I think just their recruits this next season are better than their freshmen that stepped up last season.
Right. I mean, I say right. I don't agree with you. I just said the total opposite thing. Then said you're right. Like I agree with you. I don't agree with you, but I think their recruits are better. I just don't think Clemson's going to be better overall this year.
That's fair enough. I mean, especially with everything going down in Clemson, South Carolina right now, who knows where that team's head's going to be.
That is a weird situation, but
But and you know, my last team that I'm putting in the playoffs right now, regardless of how people feel, is Oregon. I think Oregon is going to make the playoffs. I think Oregon is easily by leaps and bounds the best team in the Pac-12. I think I really think they're going to go undefeated, guys. I think they're going to beat Ohio State and Autzen, and I do. But I think the committee's going to let Ohio State get back that number one spot. I do, because that loss in Autzen is not going to be a blowout, and the Big Ten's stronger than the Pac-12. I mean, Brandon, where would you rank the second best Pac-12 team in the Big Ten?
So where would I rank USC in the Big Ten?
Yeah,
above Texas, but below Oklahoma.
Above Texas? No, Big Ten.
Oh, Big Ten. My bad.
Slacking.
So okay, they're both big, and I know the difference. I don't know why I thought you said Big 12. In the Big Ten. So I said okay. Where would I rank them in the Big Ten? Below Michigan, I'd say. Wherever Michigan lands. I think it's Ohio State, probably. I do need to wake up. I'm sorry. It's been a long day. Sorry. I feel like I'm disappointing everybody now. Ohio State's obviously the best team in the Big Ten. Penn State's up there. Wisconsin's up there. Minnesota's up there. Michigan's probably somewhere in the middle of the pack, and I think that's probably where USC lands too.
Yeah, so the sixth best team maybe in the Big Ten is the second best team in your conference. So I don't think if Oregon does slip up, I still think they make it. So I think Oregon makes it right now. And my first two out is whoever. So I'm really torn here. It's either Oklahoma or Oklahoma State. Whoever wins the Big 12 is going to be the fifth team, and then I think Notre Dame's going to be six.
Notre Dame's a safe pick. I like that because it's just
I think Notre Dame goes 10-2 or 11-1, a guaranteed loss at Clemson, but they do have some tough games on that schedule that I'm really not sure about right now.
Is that a guaranteed loss, though? Do you honestly think that's a guaranteed loss at Clemson for Notre Dame?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
You don't think they have a shot?
No.
With a senior Ian Book who showed us what he could do this past season, but he's had a full year to hone his craft and he kind of tighten things up.
He hasn't shown me he can win the big game yet. He can play well. He can play well.
We saw him play at Georgia, and he played very well at Georgia.
He played okay, but he didn't win the game. He didn't make he game managed that game. But when you play teams like Georgia and Clemson, you can't game manage. You have to win the game. You have to take some risk, make some real good throws, and I feel like Ian Book has to show me he can win against elite teams like that.
Yeah. So to wrap up my playoffs, I'm gonna go with. I feel like I'm chalk. Just call me chalk again. I guess I'm not going Oregon. I can't go Oregon. I've talked too much crap on Oregon. I'm gonna go with Oklahoma. I trust Lincoln Riley, and I trust what he can develop out of a quarterback, and so. That alone, honestly, Spencer Rattler is going to be a star this upcoming season. I don't know how he will be. He'll be in Heisman talks. I don't know if he'll end up in New York. He probably won't, but he'll be in Heisman talks. So. You don't think so? Lincoln Riley can develop quarterback. It doesn't matter if it's his first season. True. It's been his past three. It's been his past two quarterbacks' first season starting, and they've done pretty well. I would say, wouldn't you say?
I would say. I can see it. I like Oklahoma here. I just think it's going to come down to who wins the Big 12. Like I said, I really have a lot of faith in Oklahoma State this year. And I think Oklahoma's real inexperienced at some key spots. Middle linebacker, I think they have some holes on the defensive line. And I think they're really, really young at quarterback. And losing your top wide receiver in CeeDee Lamb also doesn't help.
You don't think Oregon's a little young at quarterback too?
Okay, Oregon's young at quarterback, but they're not young at a single other position.
Just because they're not young doesn't mean that they lost to Arizona State this past season. I don't know. I get Oklahoma lost to Kansas State. You can say whatever you want, but there is no excuse for losing. We just talked about the second best team in the Pac-12 being the sixth best team in the Big Ten. Where would you rank Arizona State in the Big Ten?
Not. I don't know. Arizona State under Herm Edwards, I'd probably
Are
rank
they-
them in the top
don't-
5.
Don't give me that. They were
Are
so
they not?
bad.
Are they not a top? They won their bowl game.
What does that matter? You think they're not better than USC?
Not they. Probably not. No, not last year, and probably not this upcoming year. I rank them 4th.
What?
I think.
Oh, are you talking
I
about
think
in
they're-
the Pac-12?
Yeah.
I said in the Big Ten. Where would you rank them in the
Oh.
Big Ten? I'm sitting here going, who are you putting them above? Because
No, I'd say just below where USC would rank in the Big Ten. I think you have to put the obvious: Penn State, Michigan, Ohio State, Minnesota, Wisconsin, probably even maybe Purdue over them, but not sure on that one. So
Yeah.
I'd rank, say, middle of the pack, because I mean in the Pac-12 I'd rank on 4th.
yeah,
I think they're behind USC, they're behind Oregon, they're probably behind Washington, but then I think they're right there. Because I think
Yeah.
Utah is going to suffer a major, major fall off because they lost a lot of talent. They lost
They
Bradley
did.
Anae. They lost Zach Moss. I mean, that team is going to be decimated by graduating players.
absolutely. Yeah,
But
guys. So that's
5
no,
minutes.
I guess we were pretty much on the same
We
wavelength
were.
there, Zach. Let's go ahead and I'll let you grab it. Go ahead.
Yeah, 5 minutes left. Any last second questions, get them in. But we got some big interviews coming next week. We'll be dropping them but probably late next week, early the following week. We've got some interviews in for. We kept them from you guys. We usually release them the second we record them. We got some really cool people that came on the podcast and talk specialized football. We're going to keep it a secret of who they are until right before they drop. So stay tuned for that one.
Yeah, guys.
But go ahead, man.
We yeah. So like Zach said, we've got these interviews coming up. Even when we take breaks on this podcast, because we are taking a weekend off, basically. Very exciting things happening this upcoming weekend or next weekend, I guess. And even when we take breaks, we have you guys covered. We've got you guys covered with content. We're going to release our usual end of the week, beginning of the week episodes this next week. So don't even worry about that. You know, maybe we were going on vacation. Maybe we'll do whatever we want, but we're not going to leave you guys out to dry. We already left you guys out to dry whenever I moved and didn't have Wi-Fi.
Trash.
And I'm still at war with Cox, by the way. I've got Wi-Fi now. I wouldn't be able to do this without Wi-Fi, but I'm still at war with them. Just don't get too comfortable, Cox, because I'm watching you.
But guys, we will be back with episode 3 of the Audible in the coming weeks. We'll make an announcement on all social media like we usually do. We appreciate you hanging with us on a Wednesday night, guys. But pay attention to announcements on social media. They've been scrolling across the bottom the whole time. You know how it is. Go check out old episodes available everywhere, guys. But for right now, we are